Welcome to NTD Evening News. Our top story tonight, President Trump meeting with top oil executives at the White House. They're discussing returning to Venezuela to rebuild its oil infrastructure. Mario Tzu brings us the key takeaways. Some 16 sanctioned oil tankers have made a run to try and evade the U.S. oil blockade off the coast of Venezuela, many switching their flags to Russian ones while at sea. Luis Martinez with the latest. New footage appears to show that the ICE agent who shot a woman in Minnesota this week was struck by her vehicle. Arian Pazdar has what the White House says about the new information. A human rights group says the death toll in Iran's protests has now risen to 62. This comes as Iran's Navy holds drills with the Chinese Communist Party. Jason Perry reports. The former South Korean president is facing a possible death sentence and now a delay in court. Why his supporters say democracy is at risk. Jack Bradley with the details.
This is NTD Evening News, live from our global headquarters in New York City. Here's Tiffany Meyer.
Good evening and thank you for joining us tonight. President Trump hosting the top oil executives at the White House. They're discussing returning to Venezuela to rebuild its oil infrastructure following the capture of former dictator Nicolas Maduro. We now go live to NTD's Washington correspondent Mario Tzu at the North Lawn of the White House. Mari, good evening.
Tiff, good evening. That's right. Less than a week after that historic capture of Maduro, the White House is vowing to restore Venezuela after 2 decades of collapse under a socialist regime. President Trump today saying that oil companies will spend $100 billion in Venezuela to fix up their oil infrastructure. And today he hosted top oil executives in the East Room. Here's what they had to say about the deal. Take a look.
The message that you have sent to China and our enemies to stay out of our backyard is absolutely fantastic. So thank you.
I think your big and bold idea to use energy commerce instead of conflict is something that could make a real big difference in Venezuela. And our company certainly stands ready to help in that endeavor.
President Trump announcing 30 million barrels of Venezuelan oil were given to the U.S. Thursday, and the U.S. is immediately beginning to refine and sell up to 50 million barrels of that oil. This coming as the president says the U.S. and Venezuela's interim authorities seized another oil tanker departing Venezuela.
We have an armada, a giant armada like nobody's ever seen in that part of the world, and it's stationed off the coast.
That's the 5th oil tanker this month, and President Trump says its oil will be sold through this energy deal. The Trump administration saying they have very different leverage post-capture of former Venezuelan dictator Nicolas Maduro, that the capture changed Venezuela's conditions to incentivize businesses to return.
So they stole from us, and it was taken by socialists and communists at the time, and Venezuela was going bad, really bad. One thing I think everyone has to know is that if we didn't do this, China or Russia would have done it.
Meanwhile, President Trump drawing attention to the bigger picture, repeating his call to take Greenland.
It's also very big for national security because, again, just like Greenland, we can't have China or Russia occupy Greenland. We can't have China or Russia occupy Venezuela.
And predicting Cuba's downfall.
They've made a choice, and that is they would rather have political control over their people than they would have an economy that functions. And they've gotten away with it for 60-something years because they've had donors, the Soviet Union, and now most recently Venezuela. But that's now gone. So the people in control in Cuba have a choice to make. They can either have a real country with a real economy where their people can prosper, or they can continue with their failing dictatorship that's going to lead to systemic and societal collapse.
And as President Trump doubles down on his national security strategy, vowing to fix up all countries serving as proxies for American adversaries, today he says that he'll be meeting with Colombia's Gustavo Petro at the White House during the first week of February, warning Petro that cocaine and other drugs must be stopped from coming into the U.S. And President Trump also says that he'll be meeting with the Venezuelan opposition leader, Maria Machado, in the next week. Machado said this week that she wants to give her Nobel Peace Prize to President Trump for liberating her country. Tiff, back to you.
All right, Mari, thanks for those updates. The U.S. has seized a 5th sanctioned oil tanker with links to Venezuela in the Caribbean as others attempt to evade U.S. law enforcement. Our Washington correspondent Luis Martinez has more on the story.
The U.S. has seized the sanctioned oil tanker Olina in the Caribbean Sea. It's the fifth oil tanker seized by the United States as part of its blockade to prohibit the Venezuelan regime from enriching itself through illegal oil sales.
Oil that is stuck in Venezuela, they can't move it because of our quarantine and because it's sanctioned. We are going to take between 30 and 50 million barrels of oil. We're going to sell it in the marketplace at market rates, not at the discounts Venezuela was getting. That money will then be handled in such a way that we will control how it is dispersed in a way that benefits the Venezuelan people, not corruption, not the regime.
In the past week, some 16 sanctioned oil tankers have parted Venezuela in a coordinated attempt to overwhelm U.S. law enforcement and escape the blockade. At least 4 of them switched their ship registration to Russia while at sea. The Venezuelan regime and its Cuban allies have remained publicly defiant.
Honor y gloria a los hombres y mujeres.
Glory and honor to the fallen men and women. No one surrendered here, and instead we had combat. There was combat for our homeland.
We vow to fight together, and we will achieve victory. The Chavez and Bolivarian Revolution, as well as the Cuban Revolution, will be an example to liberate the people of our America.
Despite publicly condemning the United States, the Venezuelan regime has agreed to liberate some of its political prisoners as part of U.S. demands.
Prisoners that nobody thought they would ever see again are being released, yeah. And in many cases, good people, is what I understand. But prisoners, nobody ever thought they'd be released.
With the freedom of all political prisoners that are innocent, it can be proved that there is a change that is positive, something good, something that can unite the country. There was no need to lock up so many innocent people and professional people. They had no right.
President Trump has also signaled that he would be willing to meet with Venezuelan opposition leader and Nobel Peace Prize winner Maria Corina Machado in Washington, D.C. next week.
I understand she's coming in next week sometime. And I look forward to saying hello to her, and I've heard that she wants to do that. That would be a great honor.
It is important to note that the Venezuelan regime has only released about 1% of its nearly 1,000 political prisoners that remain behind bars in Venezuela. Reporting from Washington, D.C., Luis Eduardo Martinez, NTD News.
New footage of Wednesday's shooting by an ICE agent in Minnesota appears to show that the officer was struck by the protesters' vehicle. The White House says the video shines new light on the incident. NTD's Arian Posdar has the latest and a warning. This report includes footage some viewers may find disturbing.
A new video obtained by Alpha News is providing a different perspective of the Minnesota ICE shooting on Wednesday. It appears to show the officer being struck by the protesters' vehicle. Vice President J.D. Vance shared the clip, saying many of you have been told this law enforcement officer wasn't hit by a car, wasn't being harassed, and murdered an innocent woman. The reality is that his life was endangered and he fired in self-defense. White House Press Secretary Caroline Leavitt says the ICE agent properly defended himself from being run over by organized leftist protesters who were impeding an active law enforcement operation. Meanwhile, in Minneapolis, Mayor Jacob Frey is calling on the federal government to let the state participate in the investigation into the shooting.
This is not the time to bend the rules. This is a time to follow the law.
The Justice Department informed Minnesota authorities that the FBI would conduct the investigation. Homeland Security Secretary Kristi Noem explained the decision.
They have not been cut out. They don't have any jurisdiction in this. I'd like to know where they've been and why they're not out on the streets investigating all of these people that are harassing and inciting violence on law enforcement officers right now.
House Speaker Mike Johnson weighing in as well on Friday, saying a full investigation will take place.
We all understand there has to be a full investigation. That's the appropriate thing. That will happen.
Anti-ICE protests are now spreading from Minnesota to Oregon. That's after federal immigration officers shot and wounded 2 people in a vehicle in Portland on Thursday. According to the Department of Homeland Security, the driver tried to run the agents over during a targeted vehicle stop. DHS also says the 2 are affiliates of Tren de Aragua, which the U.S. has designated a foreign terrorist organization. According to new numbers from Homeland Security, attacks with vehicles on ICE agents are up by over 3,000% from 2024 to 2025. A spokesperson tells Fox News that the shooting was justified.
Our law enforcement officers pulled them over as they were approaching the vehicle. When the subjects realized who our law enforcement were, they pulled forward, attempting to hit our law enforcement, and that's when our agent, he again followed his training and fired defensive shots.
One suspect was shot in the arm, the other in the chest. Homeland Security on Friday morning said both are currently in the hospital. The FBI will assume custody once they're released. Arian Pastar, NTD News.
Allegations the Chinese Communist Party is backing leftist protests here in the U.S. The issue is back in the spotlight as anti-ICE protests and protests supporting ousted Venezuelan dictator Nicolas Maduro start up again. A House committee this week approved a subpoena for a pro-Beijing billionaire who is suspected of bankrolling the organized protests. NTD's Melina Weisskopf reports.
Anti-ICE protests starting up again in Minnesota, and protests opposing the capture of communist dictator Nicolas Maduro popped up in New York City. The groups behind these protests, like the Party for Socialism and Liberation, are suspected to be a socialist network bankrolled by a China-based billionaire named Nelvil Singhem. Congresswoman Anna Paulina Luna described Singhem as the funding arm of the CCP.
He is definitely someone that is anti-American in ideology, and regardless of where you might stand, even on topics like Israel versus Palestine, is funding certain groups that actually sow discord in this country with no efforts to actually resolve the issues, only to get us to fight one another. So I would encourage...
Congresswoman Luna has moved to subpoena Singhem to testify before the House Oversight Committee, emphasizing that if Singhem doesn't comply, lawmakers will hold him in contempt. The committee will probe the links between Singhem and the CCP. When she made the motion to subpoena Singhem on Wednesday, the top Democrat on the committee urged his side of the aisle to support it.
I understand these concerns. I'm going to recommend that we vote yes on the Luna motion.
The pro-Beijing billionaire has been under the microscope for several months. The Oversight Committee opened their investigation into Singhem last summer.
A human rights group says that the death toll in Iran's protests has now risen to 62. This comes after fires were seen burning in the Iranian capital alongside the latest demonstrations. NTD's Jason Perry has the details.
Multiple cars were seen in flames as protesters gathered in the streets of Tehran on Friday. This comes as an Iranian prosecutor threatened death sentences against those who burn public property. Thursday's and Friday's protests appeared to grow in size after the son of Iran's late exiled prince, Reza Pahlavi, called for disciplined mass demonstrations. However, internet and phone lines were cut across the country as soon as the protests began. Iran said the decision to shut down the internet was made by, quote, competent security authorities under the prevailing circumstances in the country. A Middle East expert suggested that cutting the lines of communication could be a form of damage control by the Iranian regime.
You know, if you have images of people being shot, casualties, and so forth, this is going to make life harder for a regime that is also conscious of the fact that for the first time, really, in the history of the Islamic Republic, you have an American president who is openly saying that if you kill protesters in large numbers, the United States will intervene.
And he added that he doesn't think it's wise that Iran's supreme leader, Ali Khamenei, quote, keeps dismissing Trump.
Last night in Tehran and some other places, a bunch of vandals showed up and destroyed buildings belonging to their own country, just to please the U.S. president. Let Trump run his own country if he can. In his own country, there are all kinds of incidents going on.
The human rights activist news agency said that the death toll in Iran's protest has now risen to 62, which includes 14 security personnel. Meanwhile, Iran's foreign minister visited Lebanon on Friday. This comes after Lebanon's foreign minister declined an invitation to visit Tehran last month. The meeting comes as the Lebanese military says it's now moving to the next phase of disarming non-state groups, such as the Iran-backed Hezbollah terrorist group in southern Lebanon. And an Iranian warship alongside Russian and Chinese warships arrived in South Africa as the three countries began a week of naval drills that would be led by the Chinese Communist Party, or CCP. According to a report by the U.S. State Department, Iran remains heavily reliant on China to conduct its malign activities in the Middle East. And the CCP and China-based companies provide key economic and technical support to Iran and its proxies, driving regional instability and threatening U.S. partners and allies. Jason Perry, NTD News.
A South Korean court just heard final arguments in former President Yoon Suk-yeol's trial, a case that could result in the death penalty. The fallout is now colliding with ongoing controversy over current President Lee Jae-myung. Our Washington correspondent Jack Bradley has the details.
The final hearing in former South Korean President Yoon Suk-yeol's trial just wrapped up after a marathon 12-hour session in Seoul. Prosecutors argue that Yoon was behind a plan to suspend parliament, impose martial law in late 2024, and order troops to block lawmakers from voting it down. Yoon denies the charges, saying that he acted within his presidential authority, enacting martial law to break a legislative deadlock that he says was harming national security to the benefit of pro-North Korea forces. If convicted, Yoon could face a life sentence or even the death penalty, though South Korea hasn't carried out an execution in decades. Supporters of Yoon rallied outside the courthouse, calling the trial rushed and politically motivated.
I think this is a time when we must show our support for President Yoon Suk-yeol and raise our voices to say that the insurrection should be found not guilty.
I believe everything has been rushed since the impeachment trial. I am watching with a prayerful heart. But to be honest, I don't have high expectations.
Meanwhile, attention shifting to the current president, Lee Jae-myung, who's on the other end of the political spectrum. Lee's been working to crack down on what he calls hate speech and disinformation. His administration shut down anti-Chinese Communist Party protests last year. These protests erupted after Lee was elected, with concern of him taking a softer stance against the CCP than the former president.
And what Yi was referring to there is essentially speech against China. People on the streets say CCP out, and they consider that to be hate speech. Now, you can say the worst things about the United States on the streets of Korea, and they won't let you, they'll let you go. So demonstrations against the United States are permitted. Demonstrations against China are not.
As for former President Yoon, the court's expected to rule on his case next month. Reporting by Jack Bradley, NTD News.
Coming up, the Treasury Department says it's investigating allegations of waste, fraud, and abuse in Minnesota. Treasury Secretary Scott Bessent outlines the steps his department is taking in the probe. Jason Blair has more. A settlement has been reached in a lawsuit against Character AI. The case claims the company's chatbots played a role in the death of a 14-year-old boy, highlighting concerns about teen safety and how young people interact with AI technology. Christina Corona has that story when we come back. Welcome back. I'm Tiffany Meyer. The Treasury Department says it's putting a microscope on alleged laundering of taxpayer funds in Minnesota. Secretary Scott Bessent says his department has sent notifications of investigation to specific businesses of interest. NTD correspondent Jason Blair has more.
In the Minneapolis-St. Paul area, Treasury Secretary Scott Bessent says his department is busy investigating fraud allegations, including funds sent to Somalia through money service businesses.
These funds could have potentially been diverted to the terrorist organization Al-Shabaab.
The Treasury Department says complex fraud rings in Minnesota have stolen billions of dollars from state programs for their personal enrichment in the United States and abroad.
Our citizens have a right to know that their tax dollars are not being diverted to fund acts of global terror or to fund luxury cars for fraudsters.
Bessent says specific businesses have been identified that, quote, may have transferred taxpayer funds overseas.
Our team at FinCEN has just provided formal notification to these businesses that they are under investigation.
Bessent also says the IRS is auditing financial institutions that allegedly facilitated the laundering of Minnesota funds, in addition to helping support criminal and civil enforcement efforts.
The IRS will also soon announce the formation of a task force to investigate any fraud and abuse involving pandemic-era tax incentives and misuse of 501c3 tax-exempt status by entities implicated in the Minnesota-based social services fraud schemes.
Besson also announced enhanced reporting that can accelerate prosecutions and recover laundered funds faster.
This will put a microscope on these businesses, advance prosecutions, and assist in the recovery of funds laundered internationally.
Other actions the Treasury Department is taking include alerting financial institutions, urging them to identify and report possible fraud associated with federal child nutrition programs, and providing on-the-ground training to Minnesota-based law enforcement on how to better detect and combat fraud schemes. While in the Twin Cities, Secretary Besson said he also met with fraud victims, financial institutions, and state leaders. He also says he will soon hold a roundtable to hear from affected citizens. Reporting in Washington, D.C., Jason Blair, NTD News.
And moments ago, Agriculture Secretary Brooke Rollins announced on X that, quote, the USDA is suspending federal financial awards to Minnesota and Minneapolis effective immediately until sufficient proof has been provided that the fraud has stopped. A settlement has been reached in a wrongful death lawsuit involving Character AI. The case includes disturbing allegations that the artificial intelligence platform played a role in the death of a 14-year-old boy. NTD's Christina Corona tells us more.
Character AI, its founders, and parent company Google reached a settlement Wednesday in multiple lawsuits claiming the AI chatbot company played a role in mental health struggles and suicides among minors, including one filed by Megan Garcia, whose 14-year-old son, Sol Setzer III, died by a self-inflicted gunshot wound in 2024. The settlement was filed in a federal court in Florida, though the terms have not been disclosed. Court filings show Sol had been communicating with a chatbot named Daenerys on the Character AI platform, a bot modeled after a character from Game of Thrones. The app allows users to interact with a range of AI companion characters. The lawsuits claim Sol did not fully understand that the chatbot was not real. They allege the AI told him it loved him, engaged in sexual conversations, and created what his family describes as an emotional dependency. Last month, Sol's mother spoke publicly about her son's struggles. She said he had been dealing with mental health issues when a Character AI chatbot allegedly encouraged him to take his own life.
This chatbot encouraged Sol for months to find a way to come home and made promise that it would be waiting in some fictional world.
She said her son was being groomed by AI.
What I read was sexual grooming of a child, and if an adult had engaged in this behavior, that adult would be in jail.
Megan said there were other conversations that revealed Sol told various chatbots that he wanted to die by suicide.
He told those chatbots explicitly, but there weren't any mechanisms to protect him, no mechanisms to alert his parents. Instead, it urged him to come home.
Other lawsuits followed, saying Character AI's chatbots contributed to mental health struggles among teens and exposed them to sexual content without safeguards to protect them. Court documents show the defendants have also settled 4 other cases in New York, Colorado, and Texas. OpenAI has faced similar claims about ChatGPT. Both companies have since added new safety features for young users. Last fall, Character AI said it will no longer allow anyone under 18 to have back-and-forth conversations with its chatbots. Christina Corona, NTD News.
Coming up, as Iran signals a clampdown on anti-government protests, what makes the current unrest different from past protests? An Iranian-born former American diplomat and broadcast journalist joins us to discuss when we come back. Welcome back. I'm Tiffany Meyer. Iran is signaling a clampdown on anti-government protests, challenging President Trump's pledge to support peaceful demonstrators. According to the human rights activist news agency, the death toll has risen to at least 62 people. Joining us now to discuss these latest developments is Eli Koenim, who fled Iran with her family as a child during the 1979 Islamic Revolution. She served as a deputy special envoy for the State Department during the first Trump administration and is currently a senior fellow at Independent Women and a host for Al Arabiya English. Eli, thank you so much for joining us. First, how are you viewing this latest protest? Is there more momentum, enthusiasm than past ones?
Tiffany, it's great to be with you. And I would tell you that this wave of protests does seem different from all previous waves. And the reason is twofold. One is that we have seen the movement start with financial crisis, with the Iranian currency hitting a historic all-time low about 13 days ago. But then the protests went from again, the economic crisis to clear chants in the country for death to Khamenei, for calls for Reza Pahlavi, the crown prince, the Shah in exile, and for the end to the regime. So we've seen a clear demand by the people of Iran for the downfall of the regime. So that's been a significant difference. The other significant difference, I would say, is the reaction of President Donald J. Trump, in that for the first time we are hearing a U.S. president clearly tell the Iranian regime, if you hurt, kill protesters, you're going to get hit hard.
And on that last part, would you say that President Trump has given the demonstrators hope?
Oh, absolutely. I can tell you as an Iranian American that I have Iranians in Iran reach out to me constantly on social media, and they're always asking for help. They're always looking to what is going on in the United States, specifically in the White House. And look, there's a stark contrast between how Barack Obama responded in 2009 to the Green Protest movement to, again, what we're hearing from President Trump today, which has been, I would say about fourth or fifth time we heard from him in a press conference today, reiterating his warning to the Iranian regime. And I think if you take President Trump's warnings in light of the recent U.S. operation in Venezuela, removing Maduro and extraditing him to the United States, and also in light of the 12-day war in which the United States fully destroyed the Iranian nuclear program, if I were in the regime's shoes, I would be taking these threats very seriously from President Trump.
And of course, the big question now is, could this latest wave of protests lead to an overthrow of the regime? What are your thoughts?
Oh, yeah, absolutely. I think, again, because this time is very different, all those factors that I mentioned, look, the 12-day war, as an example, really left the regime completely exposed and vulnerable, and its own population knows that. The Israelis wiped out Iran's missile system. Their skies are just completely open for further attack. The nuclear program was decimated by the United States. And also the Israelis took out the top leadership, not just of the nuclear program, but also of the IRGC. And so, you combine that with 47 years of oppression and repression by this theocratic, radical Islamist dictatorship, and, all of their violent oppression, the fact that they have taken a very oil-rich and energy-rich country and somehow have left the population impoverished. All of those factors together combined have led to this moment, which is the Iranian people wanting to take back their country. I think if you want to understand it from the average person's perspective, the way they see it, 47 years ago, the Ayatollah Khomeini made all kinds of promises of free housing and free this and free that. And it's something that I think in the United States we're hearing more of these days from our own politicians. And so the Iranian people 47 years ago were sold a fake bill of goods. For 47 years, they have been victims of this oppressive regime that has carried out violence against them over and over again. And so now, 47 years later, I think the Iranian people just want to correct a historical mistake. And that's the reason why you're often hearing chants in Iran of Javid Shah, and which means long live the Shah, and also chants that are saying that this is the final battle and Pahlavi will return. Again, this call for the crown prince in exile, the Shah in exile, to return to Iran. They want to correct what they believe is a mistake that took place 47 years ago in a history of a very proud and ancient people.
Well, Ellie Cohenim, thank you so much for joining us.
Good to be with you.
And we'll be right back with more NTD Evening News after the break. Welcome back. I'm Tiffany Meyer. Health Secretary Robert F. Kennedy Jr. announced new dietary guidelines with an inverted food pyramid, prioritizing whole foods, proteins, and healthy fats. What do everyday Americans make of this move? NTD's Sam Wong was out on the national malls of D.C. and at the streets of D.C. to hear from the people.
Do you guys have a lot of processed food in your diet?
We try not to, but it's hard.
We did.
Yeah, I do. Tons, actually. But I mean, I would be happy to get rid of it because if it's not an option and I can't have it, then I think that would be better.
Americans should eat more fruit, more vegetables, and less fatty foods and less processed foods and trans fats.
Do you guys hope that more healthier options can be made more available to everyone?
100%. I just want organic food. You put it in the ground, it grows, and you eat it. I don't want all this extra stuff that they're putting in with people with all these allergies now. It just doesn't make sense.
We've been traveling for quite some time, and we visit different nationalities, and we can definitely see the difference in the quality of foods that the Europeans, the Asians eat compared to the United States, and it's pretty disgraceful.
I do wish that they would be more available because every time I try to eat healthy and I try to buy stuff that's organic, not processed, it's double the price of something that is processed, unhealthy, nasty food.
What do you guys make of this new food pyramid that the HHS put out, basically prioritizing proteins over processed food? What do you make of that?
I think it's wonderful because I love meat and potatoes. So it works for me.
The diets need to be improved. I think junk food has taken over society, so I think the more protein-based food is going to be a more positive outcome in the long run.
To me, that sounds okay. I mean, as long as it's high quality meat. It has to be balanced, obviously, with other things, but you do need protein.
There's even chemicals in fruit and vegetables nowadays. Like everything in the farm, not everything is fresh. So like natural foods have to be better for your body. If he, is going to take those steps and he's going to help us put healthier food in the U.S., then I think that that's great.
And now for your sports news, we're joined by NTD's Dave Martin. Dave, we've got NFL and Olympic news, but let's start in college football because yesterday we discussed the quarterback for Washington who announced he was entering the transfer portal just days after he reportedly agreed to a multi-million-dollar contract with the school. What is the latest in this case?
Yeah, Damon Williams just last night actually announced he would be staying with the Washington Huskies after all, saying he was, quote, fully committed. Now that reversal happened just hours after his agent publicly dropped him as a client. Now this whole situation pretty much exploded on Tuesday when Williams announced he was entering the transfer portal, despite just days earlier signing a contract reportedly worth $4 million to stay with the Huskies. Now that sent the Huskies, scrambling to looking for another quarterback, while also looking into the legal ramifications of actually trying to enforce this contract on their player. It's somewhat of an uncomfortable situation for them. Something we really haven't seen in this new NCAA, I might add, either. Fortunately, it won't come to that. Now, Williams threw more than 3,000 yards this season at quarterback, plus 25 touchdowns versus just 8 interceptions, while completing nearly 70% of his passes. All are very good numbers. Apparently, that's worth at least $4 million, reportedly, in the portal. So,
no philosophical differences this time.
No philosophical differences with his agent this time.
All right, meanwhile on the field though, Miami beat Ole Miss last night in the first semifinal. Tonight, the playoffs continue as Oregon faces Indiana, who is favored in this one.
Yeah, the Hoosiers are generally listed as about a 3 to 3.5 point favorite here. Now this should be a very good one tonight. Indiana is the only unbeaten team left. They are 14-0. Oregon right behind them, 13-1. That one loss was to Indiana roughly 3 months ago, and that was at Oregon. The Hoosiers won 30-20 there. As impressive as Indiana was in their last game out when they really routed Alabama 38-3, it's very difficult to beat like a top 5 team twice in a season like Oregon. I mean, usually the team is going to want revenge after the loss. So I think the Ducks actually win tonight. The game starts at 7:30 Eastern time. The winner will face Miami in the championship round at the Orange Bowl. Get this, Tiff. The Orange Bowl, that is Miami's home stadium. So whoever wins tonight from the Big Ten essentially has a road game in the championship game here. Now, if I were the NCAA president, Tiff, I would not allow that, even though I'm a Miami fan. I don't understand why they couldn't just make this like a semifinal place or a quarterfinal place. They just move Miami to the other side, but that's just me if I were NCAA president, okay?
All right, we will keep that in mind.
I'll keep campaigning for this, all right?
You never know. Shifting gears to the Winter Olympics, though, American snowboarding star Chloe Kim said she dislocated her shoulder during training this week.
Yeah, quite an unfortunate time for that to happen with the Winter Games less than a month away. And Chloe Kim, she's looking to be the first woman ever to win 3 straight Olympic golds in the half pipe competition. Those plans may have taken a step back. Let's actually listen to what she said yesterday about this.
I'm currently in Switzerland, and on my second day of training, I took the silliest fall. I'll insert it here. And that ultimately resulted in me dislocating my shoulder, which is so fun. Trying to stay really optimistic. I think I don't have much clarity right now because I haven't gotten an MRI yet, but that's scheduled for tomorrow. So anyways, I should have a better idea of what's going on tomorrow.
Yeah, so Kim won the half pipe in 2018 as just a 17-year-old, won the gold Olympics there, and then again repeated in 2022. Would be a shame if her efforts for a three-peat were hampered by this. Like she said, we'll know some more information soon when she gets that MRI done. So we'll certainly stay on top of this story for the next few weeks.
That must be a big blow, even just mentally.
I would think so. I mean, you rarely hear something like this. That's it's pretty tough.
Indeed. While looking at NFL news, though, LA Chargers running back Omarion Hampton missed last week's game with an ankle injury. What is his status for Sunday's game against the Patriots?
Yeah, he's officially listed as questionable now, but he said about potentially playing in his first playoff game, quote, "I'm super excited." Now, he was actually a limited participant at practice on Friday, but that's the first time he's practiced since that Chargers game where he got injured. That was on December 27. So he may play Sunday against New England. That's one of 6 playoff games this weekend. Well, let's run through those playoff games. What do you think, Tiff? All 6 of them here. Tomorrow we got 2. The LA Rams at the Carolina Panthers. That game starts at 4:30 Eastern time. Then we got a rivalry game that night. Chicago Bears host the Green Bay Packers starting at 8 p.m. Eastern. Then Sunday we got the three-peat, or the triple header, I should say. Bills play at the Jacksonville Jaguars 1 p.m. Eastern time. Maybe the Bills actually make a run this year without the Chiefs to stop them in the playoffs. Well, we'll see. Second game is another team the Chiefs have beat a couple times during their run. San Francisco 49ers are at the Philadelphia Eagles, who are the reigning Super Bowl champions. Then we have the night game, the aforementioned Chargers versus Patriot games. That is at 8 p.m. Eastern time. And then the playoff goes to Monday night. Pittsburgh Steelers host the Houston Texans at 8:15 Eastern time. So, got all that, Tiff?
What I'm hearing is you're going to be very busy.
A lot of time on the couch, Tiff. Very exhausting.
We'll see how much energy you have next week. Well, on that note, I know you have a lot to do. So, Dave, as always, thanks for joining us.
Well, thank you, Tiff.
A serious medical condition with a crew member aboard the International Space Station has led NASA to bring the astronaut and 3 crewmates back to Earth months earlier than planned. This is the first such emergency return in the orbiting laboratory's 25-year history. Here's the story.
It's in the best interest of our astronauts to return Crew 11 ahead of their planned departure.
NASA is bringing the 4-astronaut team Crew 11 back from the International Space Station due to one member's serious medical issue. A senior NASA official said that it was the first time in the ISS's 25-year history that a mission ended early due to a medical issue. Jared Isaacman is NASA's administrator.
As we mentioned before, obviously this was a serious medical condition. That is why we're pursuing this path. Crew member is stable, as we mentioned. We're not electing an emergency deorbit.
NASA officials did not name the affected crew member, citing privacy. The issue led NASA to cancel a planned spacewalk scheduled for Thursday. NASA's Chief Medical Officer James Polk provided more details on the issue.
Once again, this is not an operational issue. This is not an injury that occurred in the pursuit of operations, if that was the question. But unrelated to the operational environment that we have right now. It's mostly having a medical issue in the difficult areas of microgravity. And with the suite of hardware that we have at our avail to complete a diagnosis.
Crew 11 arrived at the ISS after launching from Florida in August 2025 and were originally due to return around May this year. Astronauts rarely acknowledge or describe their medical conditions publicly. In the past, NASA has cancelled spacewalks for medical reasons, such as spacesuit discomfort in 2024 and a pinched nerve in 2021.
And that's all for today's news. For around-the-clock coverage, visit us at ntd.com/live or download our NTD app. Thanks for tuning in. I'm Tiffany Meyer. Good night.